Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to an exhilarating session of ENG3E. That's Grade 11 Workplace Preparation English, brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center. I am your instructor, Mike Laverty, and today's date is Wednesday, April the 12th, 2023. Today's date marks class 33 of our 34 classes together. So today is our penultimate class, which penultimate is, of course, means second to last. So our second to last broadcast for ENG3E Term 2A. And of course, we're going to continue with what I'm hoping is solid preparation for the final exam. So today we're going over some tips and strategies and reviewing our communication skills, talking about our reading, our writing, our editing, grammatical, all kinds of literacy skills. We're just going to do our best to recap as much as we can in the hopes of preparing you for your final exam. This is, of course, week 9 of Term 2A. There are 9 weeks in Term 2A. Next week, so this is, of course, the final week, and next week we will begin Term 2B. And I believe, yesterday was the last day to officially register for Term 2B, but if you are registered as an independent learner, then you are registered until the end of this school year. And the end of the school year is June 15th, 2023. So the most important date to keep in mind. That's your deadline for having your final exam arranged and written and all your coursework submitted. So you have to have everything handed in to your teacher, and you have to have done your final exam before that date. So that's, a hugely important deadline coming up. And I know I've mentioned this before, but it definitely needs to be mentioned over and over again. You can't continue your work that you started this school year into next school year, right? So if you haven't started this course, or if you haven't started any of your courses that you want to take, you might be able to finish one of them in the remaining time that we have. So realistically here, we only have one term to go, and that's probably enough time to get a course done. Not really enough time to get 2 done, not unless you're not working or not looking after a family and you can devote, several hours every day to the course. And if not, if you've only got like an hour in the evenings, then you probably just want to stick with getting that one course done, get that one credit. And I'm available here to talk to you about any of those issues, charting your path to graduation or just completing a credit before this school year's out. So please reach out to me directly on that front, or you can reach out to one of our counselors, or, just simply Facebook message us, send us a phone call, talk to the receptionist, ask us to speak to a counselor. There's many people here who want to help you and can help you. So now's the time. Please reach out and make a plan. So we wrapped up all 5 units of ENG3E. So I just want to mention, if you're listening to us live on the radio or Bell ExpressVu, just please note that all of my classes have been archived and they're listed on my YouTube channel. So more on that in a second. But, so all of our discussions of units 1 through 5, all of the assignments, all of the culminating activities, we went through every assignment. We did every culminating activity. We did most of the readings on the air, or, we kind of summarized the longer ones. But, if you need help with a particular assignment, then you can reach out to myself, and I can help you with that. So, of course, we're on our final week together, and that's the week where we're preparing students to write the final exam. So, thanks for tuning in. If you're listening to us on the airwaves, that's 91.9 FM, broadcasting locally out of Sulikout and then to our surrounding communities. Or perhaps you're listening on Bell ExpressVu, channel 972. You can always phone in when we're live. So when a teacher is live in the studio, you can always phone in at 1-800-465-7144, or you can phone in at 1-807-737-4017. And you can also participate in the class on Zoom. So if you go to zoom.us, or if you just simply open the Zoom app, if you have it on your phone, you click on the join button and join me at 417-6699-799. Please reach out to me if you got any questions about Zoom. Most teachers at WASA offer that as a service to students. So again, my channel is Laverty, my last name, and then WASA. Go to those playlists, check out the ENG3E playlist. These YouTube videos can also be added to a jump drive or some other memory storage device, and they can be sent to you directly. So if you have internet that's not the greatest, or you're having connection issues, or whatever the case may be, we can send you that information through through a jump drive or some other means, and then you can watch them on your own time. Please reach out to me directly through email. That's mlaverty@nnecschools.org. You can also find me on Facebook Messenger. That's Laverty WASA. And you can phone the WASA building at 1-807-737-1488. I'm at extension 2211. You can phone us toll free at 1-800-667-3703. And just a quick reminder, after you've put in 8 weeks into the course, you should have read the study guide. All of the units 1 through 4 should be completed, and you should be getting very close to having Unit 5 taken care of as well. All right, so here's today's lesson. We will look at one of the articles from our assigned textbook. So that's The Road Ahead. So we're going to look at Rude Awakenings. That's a short biography about Canadian comedian Tom Green. And then hopefully, if we have enough time, we're going to look at editing some paragraphs for misspelled words, grammatical mistakes, and other issues. Got an extra grammatical in there. So I've got some practice paragraphs that we can look at together, and we can edit them to see, what mistakes were made, and hopefully you can apply those lessons to your own writing. Your learning goals for today are to I want you to take notes as we do a close reading of a text. Of course, that text is Rude Awakenings. And you will practice the valuable skill of analyzing a text by identifying its context, its audience, its format, its purpose, its the content, and maybe the elements of narrative if they apply, if it's got like a story to it. And you will test your knowledge of grammar, the parts of speech, spelling, etc. as we edit paragraphs. So we're doing, we're practicing the two categories of literacy skills. So we're practicing our reading skills, and we're practicing our writing skills today. So practicing reading skills by looking at a assigned text, and practice our writing skills by having a look at some paragraphs that have mistakes in them on purpose, and then you go in and identify, where the mistakes have been made. And your success criteria. Your success criteria for today's class is to create your own strategy in anticipation of taking the final exam. So that's and this strategy includes things like studying beforehand, practicing your skills, and staying focused and calm during the test. So yesterday's class, I had mentioned a little bit about that. So I ended the class talking a little bit about some of the techniques you can do such as taking deep breaths and just trying to center yourself and reminding yourself that you've been tested before and it may be a stressful situation, but if you go into it ahead of time, knowing what you're going to do and doing some practice, working on those skills, practicing your reading skills, practicing your writing skills, because, I can't say it enough, that's what you're going to be tested on the final exam. You're going to be tested on your ability to read text and respond to them, and you're going to be tested on your ability to write something. Your ability to write a text, usually in response to another text. Using those skills and practicing them and just getting ready and just knowing that when the time comes, you will be reading, you will be writing, and so any time spent practicing those skills is time well spent. So, with that in mind, I'm going to we'll spend about about 20 minutes or so, maybe 25, just talking about this article. Just gonna save my work here. Make sure I don't lose what I'm working on. Then I'm gonna open up the article that we're going to read together. All right, so this is a short biography about a Canadian comedian by the name of Tom Green. So at the time of when this article was published, Tom Green had his own TV show, and he was, he was very famous at the time. And then, he's gone on to make lots of comedies. He's been in movies, and he's actually recognized as being a pioneer in the field of like online videos, and in the days before YouTube, in the days that those before YouTube became popular and became such a cultural, mainstay that it is today, Tom Green was making videos. He was pranking people, notably his own parents. He was on the streets of Ottawa, shooting very raw, low-budget video and then uploading them to whatever platforms were around at the time. And then now that, podcasts are such a huge thing, and like these homemade sort of like talk shows and people just doing kind of wacky things and putting it on YouTube and trying to get attention, he was doing that all before it was, part of the mainstream. So he's a very influential comedian, very respected online. And so, but today we're reading a short biography called Rude Awakenings. So it's it's written like a story, and it uses many of the conventions of fiction. Like if Tom Green was a made-up person and someone had made this guy up and they were writing a short story, what we're about to read together reads kind of like a short story. It's got dialogue, but ultimately it's a biography, and it's telling the story of his teenage years and sort of what made him the man he is today. So we'll just go ahead and we'll read it together, and then we'll identify, certain things about the text, right? And yeah, we'll just take it from there. Rude Awakenings, written by Shannon Hawkins. As he tiptoed in through the back door of his parents' house, it took a moment for Tom's eyes to adjust to the darkness. Navigating a path around the kitchen furniture, he made his way soundlessly into the living room and, stopping mid-stride, peered into the darkness for signs of life. Glancing down the first-floor corridor that led to his parents' bedroom, He breathed a sigh of relief as nobody stirred. Everybody was still sound asleep. He'd managed to sneak in past curfew again after another summer evening of kamikaze skateboarding with his friends. Taking off his sneakers and leaving them on the living room floor, he quietly descended the back stairs to deposit his skateboard in the rec room. Quote, 1, 2, 3, 4, he said to himself, mentally calculating how many hours sleeps he could get in before his parents got up for work. Quote, that's plenty of time. Sneaking into his disheveled bedroom, he switched on the small lamp in the corner. He stumbled through the piles of clothes, skateboarding stuff, and music equipment, littering the floor, and flopped limply down on the bed. Rolling over, he grabbed his clock from the bedside table and set the alarm for 6 a.m. He pulled the comforter up over his body and drifted off to sleep. All right, so it's at this time that we can sort of begin to analyze this text and to put it into context. So if we think about the format, it is it's a biography, it's a memoir, it's sort of, I would say it reads like fiction. There's actually a genre of writing called creative nonfiction, and that's when you write about real events and you write about things that actually happened, but you write about it using the conventions or, like the formatting of a novel, right? You use dialogue and descriptive paragraphs, and you tell a story. So it reads like fiction, but it is NF. It is nonfiction. Okay, so we can look at that first paragraph and identify some, just some grammatical stuff. Like, 'cause I wanna look at this thing and focus on our reading skills, but also as we do that, we can have a look at how the article is written. So, as he tiptoed in through the back door of his parents' house, comma, you notice that the apostrophe is on the S because it's the house that belongs to his parents. So he has two parents, so it's plural, and it's the house that belongs to them. It took a moment for Tom's. There we go. We got the apostrophe M apostrophe S. So it's the it's his eyes that are adjusting to the darkness. So the way it's organized is we have this opening paragraph. We had this opening paragraph that is told like sort of like a novel, right? It's told like a novel. It's setting a story. There's we can talk about the organization. It starts with a scene. That's paragraph 1. So when you are writing your final exam, and I mentioned this in yesterday's class, it's really important to be specific and talk about the text specifically, and bring up in paragraph 1 the author brings us right into the story. They don't tell us who Tom Green is. We don't know anything about him. We're just bam. We're right there. We're in the middle of a story. They want us to picture him kind of like sneaking into his own house, right? So that's how it starts. It felt only like a few moments before 6 a.m. arrived. On cue, the blaring alarm clock signaled the dawn of a new day. Tom silenced the annoying ring with a smack. A moment later, he bolted upright and stared at the ceiling, listening intently for footsteps from overhead. Silence. Absolute silence. Throwing the covers on the floor. Whoops, I lost my plate. Tom grabbed a pillow from the bed and a t-shirt from the pile of laundry, scattered on the floor, and then rushed for the basement stairs, trying to make as little noise as possible and looking over his shoulder to make sure no one was watching him. Satisfied he was alone, Tom pushed aside the retractable door, hiding the opening under the stairs. He stuffed himself into the damp crawl space and closed the door softly behind him. Alone in the tiny quarters, he nestled his head into the pillow and drifted off to sleep with a goofy, self-satisfied smile on his face. His parents would never find him there. He was safe for another day from their threat of forced summer employment. He would make it his full-time job to spend the summer outsmarting them and avoiding doing any real labor. There was no way he was going to spend his teen years working at some mind-numbing job. He had bigger plans, and his parents were just going to have to accept it, or else try to find him. Either way, it was more exciting than scouring the want ads. Okay, so that's great. We're off to a good start. So I'm just kind of making notes in the margins, and paragraph 1 was sort of like Tom sneaking in. And paragraph 2, it really sets up the conflict of the story, right? So most stories, whether they're true stories or they're fictional stories. So, a biography is a non-fictional story. It's still telling a story, but it's based on real events. The conflict is what drives the story along. And after reading paragraph 1, it's kind of funny, and it kind of hooks you into the story, and you want to understand like what's up with this teenage boy. Why is he sneaking into his own house? Why is he trying to deceive his parents so much? And then we get to paragraph 2, and then we see the conflict is set up, right? They want him to work, and he does not want to work. So it's a classic struggle. I just wanted to spend my summer skateboarding, and they were really kind of strict about, like, getting jobs, quote, Tom said, recalling his childhood during one interview. They really wanted me to work. Tom's parents had bigger career goals for their eldest son. They weren't too keen on his plans to spend the summer lounging around their Beacon Hill home or wasting his days skateboarding. As soon as June rolled around, Richard and Mary Jane began their ritual pleas for Tom to get a job. Every summer they'd wake me up every morning at 7 a.m., said Tom, thinking back to those mornings as a 15-year-old kid trying to outsmart his parents. And I'd been out skateboarding till 3 a.m. the night before. It was crazy. The scenes in the morning were crazy when I was a kid. All right, so there we go. So we've got paragraph 3. We get Tom's own thoughts come into it, right? So before paragraph 3, we're just hearing about Tom, but then in paragraph 3, we actually hear his own thoughts. Paragraph 4. When the Greens finally realized their pleas for Tom to obtain gainful employment were being ignored, they decided to try a new approach. If reasoning with him wasn't going to work, they'd have to retaliate at his own level. Before the pair left for the office, they'd creep into Tom's bedroom and hover over his sleeping body, waiting for just the right moment to strike. One would stand at the foot of the bed, ready to yank the covers off the sleeping lump, while the others would be poised at the center, ready with a jug of water. In one quick motion, the covers would go flying across the room, and Tom would jump from the bed, just as the cold liquid splashed against his bare stomach. Howling with the agony of a wounded seal, Tom, now cold and soaking wet, vowed to get even with his parents. This meant war. In fact, it only took a few morning wake-ups before he devised a plan of his own. There was no way he was going to let them have the upper hand. He started eluding them by finding strategic places around the house. Just want to highlight something. So that's another important strategy when you're reading a text for the first time. You want to take note of some phrases and things that stand out to you. So this line of howling with the agony of a wounded seal, right? That's a metaphor. It is, it's very descriptive. It's a nice storytelling technique. It certainly gets your attention, right? And the writer is using tons of description, tons of examples to just illustrate the battle between parents and son. So he started finding strategic places around the house where he could hide from their disruptions to his beauty sleep. He'd make little sleeping areas behind the furnace or under the basement stairs, and then set his alarm for 6 a.m., when he'd sneak into the makeshift bed and fall back to sleep until he heard his parents leave for work. That's eventually what I had to resort to doing, Tom laughed. Then I'd go back to bed and sleep until noon. All right, so paragraph 5 is, the battle, I would say the battle described. This is parent versus son. So paragraph 5 is really about offering a very detailed and very evocative description of what this battle would look like between mother, father, and son. Paragraph 6. The cat and mouse games, both Tom and his parents have confessed, lasted for most of Tom's teen years. The stunts changed daily, as did the score. On occasion when Tom was the victor, he claimed he, quote, broke them in because they finally realized they weren't going to get me to work that way. Those times when his parents came out on top, he'd end up skateboarding down the streets of Ottawa searching for summer employment. I did get jobs, he confessed. I did always end up working at some crazy construction job because my dad would make me go find a job in construction. So that is, let's see, what were we on? This is paragraph 6. And you've got, Tom, Tom relents, gets a job. So we can see how the story is sort of progressing paragraph by paragraph. So that's a useful strategy that I would suggest you do if you've been given a passage, and even if the reading passage you're given, and you will be given one for your final exam, even if it's only 5 or 6 paragraphs, number the paragraphs 1 through 6, and then you can talk about them, and then it'll work as a mental note to yourself that you can make notes in the corner, or you just want to make a note of what each paragraph is about, and once you know what each paragraph is about, and you can make like a cheat sheet, then you can kind of see how they all work together. All right, paragraph 7. Knowing that from an early age Tom had a mind and personality of his own, Richard Green was constantly trying to convince him to learn a trade. Quote, so I'd spend the whole summer knocking asbestos out of ceilings, Tom said, chuckling to himself. He was in the military and he wanted me to do something like working in a carpentry shop carving wood. But hammering nails or fixing a leaky kitchen faucet wasn't exactly what Tom had in mind. If he was going to get a job, it was going to have to be something creative and entertaining. The answer came with a simple phone call. Telemarketing, of course. Contracted by an Ottawa company, Tom said he spent the summer days doing telephone sales. Well, sort of. Quote, I always ended up working in telemarketing because I'd get to do crank calls all day, Tom said. What actually happened without anyone knowing was that Tom was using his job experiences as a training ground for his comedy. He was developing some very crafty schemes, especially where his parents were concerned, an invaluable skill in his future career. And so that is, of course, make sure I numbered them correctly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Huh. Is there only, let's see, let's go back. Let's have a look here. So we've got paragraph 1, which, okay, and this is paragraph 2. It felt like only months. So, yeah. So, paragraph 1, we were, it's the opening scene of Tom sneaking around his house. Paragraph 1 is sneaking in. Paragraph 2 is, it sets up the conflict. And, you know, paragraph 3, which starts here, is, you know, I just wanted to spend my summer skateboarding. That's the paragraph where we get, yeah, Tom's own thoughts. And then paragraph 4 starts off, when the Greens finally realized their pleas for Tom to attain gainful employment were being ignored, they had tried a new approach, right? So paragraph 4 is, yeah, paragraph, that's where I made my mistake. So paragraph 4 is the battle described. It's also their new approach. That's when they decide that just simply talking to him is not really going to do it. So 4, and then of course paragraph 5 is where Tom relents, finally does get a job. And then the final paragraph, starting with, you know, yeah, and then the final paragraph, paragraph 6, this is the conclusion. You know, Tom practicing his skills as a comedian who loves to prank people and, you know, use his voice, right? So I think they're being funny, but at the same time, you know, he would actually legitimately get these communication skills by spending time on the phone, right? And by practicing his comedy through prank calls, but also just practicing his speaking voice and talking to people and listening to people and seeing what kind of reaction he gets. You know, when I say this, they do that, and when I act silly, they get mad, and right. So just, you know, it's about being a listener and judging people. And so I'm sure he learned quite a bit. Not the lessons his parents probably wanted him to learn, and I'm sure not the lessons his employer wanted him to learn, but, you know, and that's where, you know, that's where that's how the story ends. And then so we could ask ourselves some important questions about this story. And, you know, some questions you might get on the final exam. They're going to come in a few varieties. So, you know, I would say practicing. There we go. You know, we could just talk about that, you know, types of questions. So there's directly stated information. You know, and that is, you know, you finding specific words or ideas in the text. So a question you might get is, name the job that Tom finally settled upon at the end of the story, or, you know, name some of the tactics that Tom used to avoid his parents, right? So it's going to be sort of like, you know, not like a word search, but like you're looking for something specific. The question is saying, why did Tom do this, and provide an example of when Tom did this, and, you know, what were Tom's decisions, right? So it's going to be in the text, and then you don't have to sort of like bring anything to the table other than just you reading carefully. The other kind of information you're going to be asked to look at is indirectly stated information. And this is where, you read between the lines. Yeah, you read between the lines. You know, find, you got to make insights. This is sort of like the deeper meaning of the story. And so an example of an indirectly stated information question would be like, what is the purpose of this assignment? Is the author trying to inform us? Are they trying to entertain us? Are they trying to persuade us to have a certain opinion? So, I would say that the author is trying to entertain us. You could also say, like, what do you think, what do you think Tom's mother's opinions were of him? We don't really hear much from the mother. We hear more about the father in here, right? So that's kind of reading between the lines, for example, and what is the main idea? What is the main message of this story? What is the author trying to communicate to their audience, right? So that's indirectly stated information. So it's going to be, or it could also be your opinion. So for directly stated information, there's really no opinion. The author said a certain thing, and you have to identify that certain thing. Indirectly is where you can make, your opinions about a novel, and this is where you're kind of reading between the lines, and you're kind of having a deeper look at what makes this article, right? And then the other kind of question you might get is the making connections question. And when you're asked to make connections, you might be asked to relate to Tom and to talk about how, can you identify with this character? What would you do in this situation? That kind of thing. So just like extend the story to your life and try to make those personal connections, come alive. So maybe just to, maybe just to provide a little bit of a recap, what I would do if it was me answering this question, and I had to, I had to read this text, I would do the following. So these are sort of like the overall strategies I would employ. So these are my tips here for this kind of an assignment. So one, I would take a few slow breaths. Relax. Number two, I would read the questions before the text. So take a few deep breaths. Deep breath in for 3 or 4 seconds. Hold it. Slow breath out 4 to 5 seconds. Get yourself calm. Compose yourself. Then read the questions about the text before you, that should say text, not test. Read the questions before you read the actual text. And then 3, I would make notes on the format, the paragraphs, make make an outline. Make an outline for reference, right? So just jot down what each of the paragraphs is about, make some notes on the format, what kind of a document you're working with. And then you're also going to want to highlight words and ideas that you can use in your response, right? So some of those highlights and words that you identify, they might be highlighted for a specific question. So I mean, if you have the time, you might want to do that too. You might want to write down, like, say, like, oh, write this, that's good for question 1, or you could even do Q1, for example, right? You could like highlight this and just be like a note to yourself, like question 1. That's going to help me answer question 1. Just some method of keeping track of what you're reading, right? And and that just when you answer the questions and your teacher can see what you've put in, that's why it just helps to talk about the article specifically. You want to bring up specific lines, specific paragraphs. You want to talk about how the whole thing is organized. You want to talk about what kind of a text you're dealing with. It's a biography, it's a memoir. You want to talk about how it's written, right? So so you're making notes on the content, how it's written. In this case, it's written with humor. It's very accessible. It's funny. It's very entertaining, right? So, and then how does it flow together? How does it reinforce the main idea? You might argue that the main idea behind this essay, this little short memoir biography, is that maybe the moral of the story is that you get where you need to go, but you don't really plan on the road you plan to get there wasn't the one that got you there, right? Or just how success can come through it comes through hard work and persistence, and but Tom's persistence not to work sort of also led to his creativity. So I'm just kind of riffing here. I don't really know what exactly to say, but you have to. I would say 4. You need to summarize it and find the main idea. And that's, 1 sentence. So you're thinking about the text as a whole, the impact the text makes on you as a reader, but then you're also breaking it down by its component parts. It's words, it's sentences, it's paragraphs, how the paragraphs are organized, how it's written. So hopefully that helps you out, and that gives you some overall strategies to use when talking about a text that you are asked to read and then comment on it. All right, so I think we have time to look at one of these. All right, so these are paragraph corrections that I found on this great website, EnglishForEverybody.org. So EnglishForEveryone.org, I highly recommend you go to that website. There's tons of great resources on there, and I found this one. So the way these work is you have a paragraph, and then they number spots where you as a writer have to make a decision and figure out what the best way to correct that is. So there's a mistake, and some of them, I guess, they're not really trick questions, but some of them, you don't have to change anything, right? So you might think, you look at it and you might second guess yourself, but you really don't have to. You really don't have to change anything on some of them, but some of them you of course do. All right. So maybe we'll just read the first. We'll just read the paragraph as it is. Jamie had been applying for full-time jobs for several months. The last week, he received a call from Human Resources Director at a computer software company. The HR director asked Jamie, could he fly to Chicago for a job interview. The company offered to pay for Jamie's plane ticket to Chicago so that he will not have to pay for it himself. Jamie agreed to come for the interview. Since then, Jamie has been busy collecting information about the company. He also went shopping for a new suit. Jamie and his wife have been rehearsing answers to possible interview questions so that Jamie will be good and ready his best. Jamie is nervous about the interview, but is looking forward to working at a new place. Now, I'm hoping that one thing you've caught on, if you can listen and watch at the same time, is that when you read anything out loud, you find the mistakes in it, right? So if you're writing an exam and you're in a crowded spot, you can still read that inside your mind. And there's many ways that we can read, but typically we can read and be silent in our mind and just sort of just read it. And that's when you're reading really quickly and you're skimming and you're just reading it for the sake of getting it over with. But if you read something in your mind and read it to yourself, you want to actually listen to those words, like actually say them inside your mind. And you will definitely find mistakes. And sometimes it's not just about finding mistakes, it's about finding the right way to phrase something. And there may be 4 or 5 different ways to say a sentence, and they can all be grammatically correct and no spelling mistakes. But one of them is going to be the best for your particular assignment or for what you want to say. Or it fits in with things you've said elsewhere in the writing. So a lot of writing really comes down to consistency and being consistent from first word to last word. And that only comes through with time, right? That only comes through with you putting the time in and making sure everything is consistent, right? So just with our remaining minutes here, let's have a look at the first one. So Jamie been applying for full-time jobs for several months, right? So when you read that, your brain might fill in the blanks, but there's a missing word there. So our options are Jamie have been applying, Jamie has been applying, Jamie have applying, or Jamie has applied for full-time jobs for several months. So in this case, it is option B. Jamie has been applying. So has is the helper verb here, and it's consistent with Jamie, right? Jamie and his wife have been applying, and then the have would apply to the singular, to the plural subject. Hopefully, I'm not being too complicated here, right? But if one person is doing something, one person has been doing something. 2 people have been doing something. So he has been applying for full-time jobs for several months. The last week, he received a call from a human resources director. So they have last week, he received on the last week, or C, the last week. The last week he received a call. Now it should be just simply last week. Jamie has been applying for full-time jobs for several months. The last week, no, maybe that does make sense. Both A and C are correct. Last week doesn't really make sense because it sort of suggests that the reader should know that it's, it could create some confusion. So I would say Hmm. Well, well, then I would say last week. Yeah. Yeah, that works. So last week he received a call from human resources director at a computer software company. The HR director asked Jamie. Um, so let's look at number 3. So in this case, we do need to stop the sentence. So last week he received a call from the human resources director at a computer software company. Period. The HR director asked Jamie, right? So that's an example of a run-on sentence. That's where two sentences kind of flow together. So what we need to do is we got to put a comma here and then capitalize that. So capital T. The HR director asked Jamie, could he fly to Chicago for a job interview? I think we're missing the word if there. Let's see. If he could fly. If could he fly, whether he could fly. Um, would whether he could fly work in that situation? The HR director asked Jamie whether he could fly to Chicago for a job interview. I would go with A, if he could fly, right? Because that's simply, sometimes when you have the word whether in there, it sets up an expectation, whether or not, whether you could do this or not do that. So I would just simply say the HR director asked Jamie if he could fly to Chicago for a job interview. Since then, Jamie has been busy collecting informaton. So they spelled the word information wrong. Um, Reading your work out loud may not always catch your spelling mistakes, but it does help. It really does help if your eyes are looking at the word and then you say the word out loud, right? So it's just like a double check. Either your eyes should catch it, or the combination of looking at a misspelled word should come into place here. Sorry, catching the spelling mistake is your odds of catching it are going to go up dramatically if you read your stuff out loud. He also went shopping for a new suit. So SUITE is actually sweet, right? But so we got to cut that. He's looking for a suit. SUIT. Jamie and his wife have been rehearsing answers to possible interview questions so that Jamie will be good and ready his best. So we could simply say he could be good and ready, smart and ready. Jamie will be Jamie, so that Jamie will be good and ready his best. Prepared. Yeah, I would just simply say prepared. Um, you know, Sometimes there's just a perfect word, and sometimes the perfect word can replace like 3 or 4 other words, right? That makes your writing a bit kind of, I wouldn't say sloppy, but it makes it wordy and kind of clunky and hard to deal with. So instead of saying good and ready his best, or good and ready and at his best, I would just say prepared. They're doing this so he'll be, quote, prepared. Jamie is nervous about the interview, comma, but his looking forward to making it his looking forward, so that's he is, right? So we can say he apostrophe s, or we can say he space is. We can use either, right? And again, a lot of this comes down to consistency, and this is he is formal, and then he's is more informal. So it's a very minor point, but typically you use the contraction. That's when the two words have been joined together. So he apostrophe s is used in a more like informal setting, where you typically spell the word out, like there is instead of there's, depending how formal what you're doing. So if you're writing an email to your boss, or if you're writing up a report, then you might want to use the more formal option. Okay, so that is all the time we have for today's class. Thanks for tuning in.